great to be here. Good morning, everybody. My name is Mike Jones. You can tell by the accent, I'm originally from the States, not from here. I've been living here now for close to a year, basically because the US put me in exile. Interesting topic. So a little bit about myself. 2016 is when everything kind of hit the proverbial fan. I became classified as a cyber terrorist by the International Business Times in London. Made it very difficult to travel, get jobs, bank accounts, all that good stuff. I'm now reformed. I'm not really sure exactly what the term reformed means, and I guess it's very subjective. I've done government work. I've done pen tests and red teaming for the Department of Defense. I was actually in the military at one point doing signal intelligence and electronic intelligence. I was stationed at the Joint Force Intelligence Command in Virginia. I worked in banking, and I have a pretty interesting story when it comes to banking, Occupy Wall Street, Anonymous. DoD, pen tester, and I also created a voice over IP hacking distribution to intercept voice, because that was one of my specialties in the military, was interception of voice communications. So what is a hacker? We throw around that term quite a bit. The media portrays us with dark hoodies. I own a couple, but they don't define who we are. We're very innovative. We like to use new technology that you're using to defend your networks against you. We are problem solvers. We think out of the box. Free thinkers, we don't like to be constrained by guidelines or manuals. We like to try to push the technology, break the technology, see how we can make it work to our benefit. We're also creative. I do a lot of interviews for new employees, and one of the things I found that's pretty common between most pen testers and most hackers is that we all have some sort of creative streak, whether it be music, whether it be fine art, something. There's a creative streak in all of this. And hacker is a positive term. I'm not really sure at what point in time during my lifetime that hacker became a bad term or something very dark, but it's a very positive term. Without hackers, we wouldn't have progress and innovation. Now, there is a flip side to that term, a black hat hacker. And I'm sure everybody in this room knows exactly what a black hat hacker is. But we, as black hats, there's an array of motivations, depending on who you're working for, if you're working for somebody, or if you're just a lone wolf. Some of the psychology, and I started reviewing basically my own psychology after I got turned, and tried to figure out what made me different from other people. So some of the psychology that fuels what we do, some of us have a need to feel some sort of control, whether we've lacked it in early years in childhood development, or whether we lack it now. We look for that control. And challenge is always accepted. We used to love when people would say our networks are completely unhackable. There was a guy in the US that did a kind of an identity theft or identity protection company. And he put his social security number up on the side of his van that he drove around the country and dared anybody to hack him. And of course it did, it happened. A lot of us are introverted. Up until I got turned, I would not be staying on the stage for sure. I like to work alone, and we work better, we can communicate better within our group. It's very difficult to go from, a skiff to a sales floor. It just doesn't happen. And we look for the rush. So I did a sort of a test, sort of a study for DHS, and it was called Project Tularosa. And you can read about it, it's been published online. And what they did was they invited me to come out. They set up a system of networks that were SCADA networks. They put biometrics on me. They put a watch that measured my heart rate, perspiration, all that stuff. And the laptop that I was using actually monitored my eye movement and keystrokes. And what they were trying to do is trying to figure out what biometric response, what bioresponse was happening when hackers were attacking these sensitive critical infrastructure. And it was a pretty interesting test. There was 12 of us that were invited from around the country, from different walks of life. And the outcome was pretty interesting. I'll let you read about it. And we also do our own tagging, internet graffiti. I love street art, and a lot of the groups, especially web defacements, we leave our own little tags everywhere. It goes back to the creativity. So motivations. There's a wide range of motivations when it comes to different types of attacks, whether it be financial, like Occupy Wall Street, reputation, trying to build street creds for different groups, or trying to jump the hierarchy, climb the ladder. Hacktivism, which is what I got involved with from the get-go. We all know what hacktivism is. Strictly malicious. Now, there are some black hat hackers out there that are strictly malicious, that have no purpose other than causing chaos or mayhem. And hired. Black hat hackers, and even some of the white hat hackers are freelance, and we're hired by different groups. As a black hat, I didn't really care who was making that request or how much, what currency they were paying in. It was the highest bidder. So what got me here? I went several years without having any major conflict or any confrontation with law enforcement until about 2008, when I started getting vocal. I went to a conference in Las Vegas called DEF CON and was interviewed for a documentary called Hackers Are People Too. And curious enough, they asked me strictly questions about cyber law. And at that time, cyber law was very immature. So I had a lot of things to say. And shortly after that, the FBI paid me my first visit, which was a great discussion. Natural ability. When I was young, my dad worked at the NSA. So I got all kinds of electronic kits, gadgets to take apart, break. So that's where I spent most of my time. Defiant, as every teenager grows up, they go through a defiant stage. Mine never stopped. I always wanted to buck the system because I felt like the system was not working for every person. It was only working for about that 1% of people. I was an outlier. Even growing up, I was an outlier. Department of Defense did a really solid for me. When I decided to go into the military and go into intelligence, they gave me a toolkit that sharpened my skills even further. I was one of the Navy's first CTNs, which is Computer Network Attack and Defend Crypto. So I honed my skills on breaking into foreign networks. And of course, money. Money got me here as well. So some of those motivators did end up being financial for me. I'll get into that a little bit later. So who I was in Anonymous. My moniker was Stinger, it still is. I was very ego-driven, persistent. I had no regard for people. And when I say I had no regard for people, I mean I had no regard for the people that were behind the systems that I was attacking. And I didn't really take into consideration if there's any personal effects going on to that victim. It was a business, strictly business, and that's the way we looked at it. A lot of what goes on, especially with hacktivists, LulzSec, Anti-Sec, Anonymous, cyber gang warfare, there is infighting between groups. Within groups, we have splinter groups that fall off because they don't agree with the ideologies or different operations. And cyber war. When I got turned, I became a CI, a confidential informant. And I did work in some groups that were APTs, APT1, APT28. And I'll get into a little bit of that later on. And I always pick the target with the most impact, whether it be financial, whether it be to take down a network itself or shut the lights off or whatever had the largest impact, that's what I went after. And I had no remorse. And these are some of the things that I specialized in the military as well as within Anonymous. RATs, as Helen spoke about, IRC exploits from way back in the day, database theft, voice over IP exploitation, and SCADA. I really enjoyed SCADA. I got involved with SCADA with Idaho National Labs. They would set up new SCADA systems, and I would go out and red team those systems, which is a lot of fun. So life in Anonymous. A little bit of backstory about what happened and why I was turned. I was working for a large financial institution in the US, very large institution. And during the day, I was working red team and threat intelligence. And at night, I was taking that intelligence and handing it over to different groups that were targeting the financial institution, which started the investigation. I got out of the institution, the financial institution, before the FBI actually got really deep into the investigation. And it was, living on both sides of the fence was very difficult. It created a lot of paranoia, stress, of course. And along with that, what happens in these groups, law enforcement, the government like to put plants into the groups to disrupt motivations, to glean intelligence, basically to get hooks into the operations to take it down. So we had people like Sabu, we had other guys that were already flipped and doing CI work within our groups. So you didn't really know who to trust. Fortunately, when I got turned, I had a really good lawyer, and the only CI work that I did was foreign intelligence. So also with living in Anonymous, I had calls from the FBI quite frequently. Lunches with suits, really bad suits and really horrible lunches. And I worked for the FBI for about a year during the 2016 election, which was very interesting as it correlates with APT 28. And also you had to deal with threats from other groups, physical threats, cyber threats. You know, there was always some sort of competition or stepping on each other's feet. They got kind of intense sometimes. So what I do now, I lead teams, obviously a speaker, and I'm working to defend. Right now I do a lot of work with the London Met Police with their Prevent program. I did the intervention workshop last year, was my first one, and it had a really huge impact. It was really interesting, and to see the kids that were so young that had been in trouble, and in other systems they would be forgotten and thrown away. And with their talent, it would be a total waste. But one thing I want to close with, and I want you to think about, we've been in the cybersecurity business for what, 30 years, 20, 30 years, and we still haven't found that solution. Is it too much to think that it's not a technology problem, it's a people problem? Because if we go and we disrupt the motivations, and if we reach some of these people before they get to a black hat level or an intermediate state level, what are our chances of taking those people and turning them good? It does happen. I can tell you it happens. But as we build stronger algorithms, as we build better technology to stop the intruder, guess what? The intruder gets better as well. You're forcing them to get better. You're forcing them to innovate and become more technical. So my challenge is reach out to the people in your organizations, get to know each other. It's a people problem. Cover the basics of what you know and what you can do, and then start with the basic building blocks. Because I think a lot of corporations jump way too fast in putting in strong defenses and don't cover phishing, don't patch, and it leaves the door wide open for us. Thanks.